I was never the kind of guy who made noise when he entered a room. I didn't have that loud confidence, that careless charm that made people turn their heads. I was quieter than that. I noticed things. I listened. I remembered small details most people forgot. I paid attention to emotions, not just words. And somehow, in a world that worships excitement, that kind of presence often goes unseen. But with her, I thought it was different. I met her at a time when neither of us was really looking for anything serious. It started with simple conversations about music, about late nights, about dreams that felt too big for our small lives. She had a way of speaking that felt soft but restless, like she was always chasing something she couldn't quite name. I liked that about her. I liked how her eyes lit up when she talked about the future, even when she didn't know exactly what she wanted from it. We became close slowly, the way real connections usually form. No fireworks, no dramatic moments. Just consistency. Messages that arrived every morning. Long talks that stretched into the night. Comfortable silences that didn't feel awkward. I became the person she called when her day went wrong. The person she texted when something good happened. The person who stayed when everyone else drifted. When she was overwhelmed, I listened without interrupting. When she doubted herself, I reminded her of her worth. When she was angry, I didn't argue. I tried to understand. I thought that was love. I thought being steady mattered. I thought being safe mattered. I thought being kind mattered. She would sit across from me in cafes, stirring her drink long after the ice had melted, talking about her fears. She was afraid of wasting time, afraid of choosing the wrong person, afraid of settling for something that didn't feel extraordinary. I never judged her for that. I understood. Everyone wants to feel chosen by something special. Sometimes she would look at me and smile in a way that felt almost apologetic, like she was grateful for something she wasn't sure she deserved. I mistook that look for affection. I mistook comfort for connection. I mistook presence for attachment. And maybe that was my mistake. I didn't chase her. I didn't play games. I didn't disappear to make her miss me. I didn't make her jealous on purpose or withhold affection to increase my value. I didn't treat love like a strategy. I treated it like something honest. And honesty, in the wrong place, can feel invisible. I was there when she cried about people who disappointed her. I was there when she questioned her own choices. I was there when she said she felt lonely even when surrounded by people. I never thought to ask whether she felt lonely with me. Looking back, I realize now that I filled a role she needed, not a place she desired. I was the emotional home she visited when the world felt too loud. But I wasn't the adventure she wanted to build a life around. The realization didn't come all at once. It came slowly, in small moments that didn't feel important at the time. The way she looked past me when someone more exciting walked into the room. The way her energy shifted when someone unpredictable made her laugh. The way she seemed more alive around chaos than calm. I noticed, but I didn't question it. Because when you care about someone, you don't want to believe you're optional. One evening, we were sitting together as the sky turned orange and the city lights started flickering on. It was one of those quiet moments that always felt safe to me. She was unusually silent, twisting her fingers together, avoiding my eyes. I asked her if something was wrong. She hesitated, and then she said it. "You're amazing. You really are." She paused. "You're just too nice." The words were soft, almost gentle, but they landed heavier than anything she could have said harshly. Too nice. Not wrong. Not bad. Not hurtful. Just not enough. She tried to explain. She said she wanted something more exciting, more intense, more unpredictable. She said she didn't want calm. She wanted sparks. She wanted someone who made her feel nervous, someone who made her heart race, someone who didn't feel safe but felt thrilling. I listened. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't try to change her mind. Because you can't convince someone to want what they don't. So I nodded. I told her I understood. I told her I wanted her to be happy. And she left. She walked away from something stable in search of something electric. And I stayed behind with something quiet but heavy, the feeling of being almost enough. That's a painful place to exist. Not rejected for being wrong. Rejected for being right in the wrong way. After she left, Everything felt quieter than before. The messages stopped. The late-night conversations disappeared. The space she once filled became noticeable by its emptiness. And that's when I realized how much of myself I had poured into being what she needed. I had made myself a place of rest for her, but I had never asked if she wanted to live there. I started questioning things. Was kindness unattractive? Was patience boring? Was loyalty invisible? Was calm just another word for forgettable? I watched people chase love that burned fast and died quickly, and I wondered why slow, steady warmth didn't feel enough anymore. I replayed her words in my mind. Too nice. Not ambitious enough. Not dangerous enough. Not dramatic enough. Just too nice. And in that moment, I understood something painful and important. Some people don't want peace. They want intensity. Some people don't want safety. They want excitement. Some people don't want someone who stays. They want someone they have to chase. And I was never meant to be that person. So I didn't change myself. I didn't harden my heart. I didn't become cold. I didn't learn how to manipulate emotions. I stayed exactly who I was. Because even if you didn't choose me, someone else would. Someone who would see kindness as strength. Someone who would see patience as depth. Someone who would see loyalty as rare. At the time, I didn't know who that person would be. I only knew that I wasn't wrong for being gentle. I was just in the wrong story. And sometimes, love doesn't fail because it isn't real. It fails because it isn't wanted in the form it arrives. After she left, I thought the hardest part would be missing her. I was wrong. The hardest part was adjusting to a version of life where my presence no longer mattered to the person I had made space for every day. It was waking up and not having a reason to check my phone. It was sitting in silence that used to be filled with her voice. It was realizing that someone could be such a big part of your world and then become a memory without warning. At first, I kept expecting her to come back. Not physically, emotionally. A message, a late-night call, a sudden realization on her part that she had made a mistake. I imagined her missing the way I listened, the way I stayed calm when she panicked, the way I cared without conditions. I imagined regret showing up on her doorstep and leading her back to me. But regret is quieter than we expect. It doesn't knock loudly. It doesn't announce itself. It arrives slowly, after damage has already been done. I tried to move on, but moving on isn't a switch. It's a slow unlearning. It's training your heart not to reach for someone who is no longer there. It's stopping yourself from saving thoughts for someone who no longer wants them. So I filled my time. I worked longer hours. I went on walks without music, just to hear my own thoughts. I started writing again, not because I wanted to be a writer, but because I needed a place for all the words I could no longer send her. That's when I started seeing her sister more often. Not intentionally. Not at first. She would be around when I visited mutual friends. She would show up at gatherings I almost skipped. She would sit across from me and ask how I was doing. And unlike most people, she didn't ask as a formality. She waited for the answer. At first, our conversations were careful, neutral, respectful. We talked about work, about movies, about small, safe topics. Neither of us mentioned her sister. Neither of us acknowledged the quiet history sitting between us. But there was something different about the way she listened. She didn't interrupt to add her own story. She didn't rush to give advice. She didn't treat my feelings like something that needed to be fixed. She simply let them exist. That kind of listening is rare. One evening, we ended up walking together after everyone else had left. The street was quiet, lit by soft yellow lights, and the air felt lighter than usual. We talked about our childhoods, about the things that shaped us, about the ways we learned to love. She told me she grew up watching people mistake loudness for strength and control for confidence. She told me she used to think that's what love looked like. Something dramatic, something consuming, something overwhelming. But now, she said quietly, I think real love is the thing that feels calm when the world is loud. That sentence landed somewhere deep inside me, because it was the opposite of what I had been told. It was the opposite of what I had been rejected for. From that moment, something shifted. Not suddenly, not romantically, just gently. She started checking in on me. I started noticing when she was quiet. We began to recognize each other's moods without words. We became comfortable in silence. And that's how closeness usually grows. Not in sparks, in stillness. We never crossed boundaries. We never disrespected her sister. We never turned emotional closeness into something inappropriate. We just existed near each other. And sometimes, that's more intimate than touch. Over time, I started laughing again. Not the polite laugh I used to give. The real one. The one that comes from feeling understood. I started feeling lighter. Like I didn't have to perform. Like I didn't have to prove my worth. Like I didn't have to be anything other than myself. And that scared me, because I had just learned what it felt like to lose someone who mattered. And I didn't want to risk that again. But the heart doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't care about logic or timing or convenience. It notices safety. It notices warmth. It notices presence. And slowly, without either of us naming it, something grew between us. One night, she asked me if I ever felt invisible. I said yes. She said, "That's strange. You're one of the most noticeable people I know." I asked what she meant. She said, "You notice people. And when someone notices you like that, you feel seen." No one had ever described me that way before. I realized then how much of my identity had been shaped by how others reacted to me. Too quiet, too soft, too emotional, too nice. But in her eyes, those weren't flaws. They were language. We didn't fall in love quickly. We leaned into it slowly, cautiously, like stepping into water 1 inch at a time. Until one day, it was impossible to pretend that nothing was happening. We were too comfortable, too connected, too aware of each other. She didn't confess dramatically. She didn't make it a moment. She just said, one evening, while we were sitting side by side, "I think I care about you in a way that's more than friendship." There was no music, no rain, no dramatic pause, just honesty. And that made it more powerful than anything else. I didn't answer immediately, not because I didn't feel it too, but because I wanted to be sure that I wasn't replacing something unresolved with something new. Sure that I wasn't using her presence to heal a wound that wasn't done bleeding. Sure that I wasn't carrying pain into a place that deserved peace. So I took time, and she respected that. She didn't pressure me. She didn't rush me. She didn't turn my hesitation into rejection. She waited, and that, more than anything, showed me who she was. So when I finally said yes, it wasn't impulsive. It was calm. It was grounded. It felt like choosing a home, not a thrill. And that's when I understood something I had never been taught. Love doesn't always feel like fire. Sometimes it feels like warmth. Sometimes it feels like safety. Sometimes it feels like being able to breathe normally for the first time in a long time. I didn't fall in love with her sister because I wanted revenge. I didn't fall in love because I wanted to prove something. I fell in love because I was finally with someone who spoke the same emotional language as me. Someone who didn't confuse chaos with passion. Someone who didn't confuse calm with boredom. Someone who didn't confuse kindness with weakness. And maybe that's why this love felt different. Not louder, just deeper. When I said yes, nothing in the world changed. There were no fireworks, no dramatic shift in the sky, no sudden feeling that life had entered a new chapter. But everything felt quieter. And in that quiet, I started noticing how different this kind of love was. It didn't demand my attention. It didn't compete for space in my mind. It didn't feel like something I had to manage. It simply existed. We didn't rush into anything. We didn't make grand promises or dramatic declarations. We stayed where we were emotionally and let things grow naturally. We went on simple walks. We shared meals without checking our phones. We talked about fears instead of pretending not to have them. And slowly, I realized something I had never experienced before. I wasn't trying to impress her. I wasn't choosing my words carefully. I wasn't hiding parts of myself. I wasn't afraid that honesty would make me less desirable. She already knew me. She knew how I processed emotions. She knew my quiet moods. She knew my tendency to overthink and my habit of listening more than speaking. And she chose me anyway. That was new. With her sister, I had always felt like I was auditioning for a role I didn't quite fit. With her, I felt like I had already been cast as myself. We spent evenings talking about things that felt too small to matter and somehow mattered deeply. Why people fear being alone more than being unhappy. Why kindness is often mistaken for weakness. Why the loudest people in a room are rarely the strongest ones. She listened when I spoke about how being called too nice had changed the way I saw myself. She said, "That says more about what she needed than about who you are." That sentence healed something I didn't know was still open. We didn't hide our relationship, but we didn't advertise it either. It existed quietly, like a secret that didn't need to be protected. But the world has a way of noticing change. People noticed the way I smiled more, the way I stood straighter, the way I seemed lighter. And eventually, her sister noticed too. At first, it was subtle. Longer glances, unanswered questions, a strange tension in the air whenever we were in the same room. She didn't say anything directly, but I could feel it. Something had shifted in her, not toward me, toward what she had lost. I could see it in the way she watched us interact, the way she studied the calm between us, the ease, the softness. I think that's when she realized what she had walked away from. Not me specifically, but the kind of love I represented. She had chased intensity and found instability. She had chased excitement and found exhaustion. She had chased thrill and found unpredictability. And now she was watching peace choose someone else. That realization is painful, not because you want the person back, but because you want the version of yourself who made a different choice. One night, she called me. I hadn't heard her voice in a long time. It sounded softer than I remembered. She asked how I was doing. I said I was good. She paused. Then she said, "You seem happy." It wasn't an accusation. It was a realization. She didn't say she missed me. She didn't say she wanted me back. She didn't cross any lines. She just said, "I didn't think you'd move on so fully." I didn't know how to respond, because what she was really saying was, "I didn't think you'd be okay without me." And that's a strange thing to realize, that someone thought your happiness depended on their presence, that they believed they were the center of your world, even after they chose to leave it. I wasn't angry with her. I wasn't bitter. I was just distant. Not emotionally, chronologically. She belonged to a past version of me, and I wasn't that person anymore. After that call, I felt a strange sense of closure. Not dramatic, not emotional, just complete. I finally understood that what we had wasn't wrong. It was just temporary. It served its purpose. It taught me what kind of love didn't fit me. And now I was living inside the kind that did. With her, love didn't feel like something I could lose at any moment. It felt steady. It felt mutual. It felt chosen. Not because I was convenient. Not because I was safe. But because I was seen. We started talking about the future. Not in terms of plans. In terms of values. What kind of life we wanted. What kind of energy we wanted around us. What kind of people we wanted to become. We agreed on things that mattered. Kindness over image. Depth over drama. Growth over ego. That alignment felt more romantic than any grand gesture ever could. One evening, she said something that stayed with me. She said, "You don't make my heart race. You make it rest." I smiled, because that was exactly what I wanted. I didn't want adrenaline. I didn't want unpredictability. I didn't want chaos. I wanted peace. And for the first time, peace wanted me too. It's strange how regret doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't crash into your life. It doesn't announce itself with chaos. It enters quietly, through comparison, through watching someone else live the life you could have had. That's how it began for her. Not with longing for me, but with longing for what she saw between us. The calm, the ease, the softness, things she had once dismissed as boring. She started asking about me through other people. How is he doing? He looks different. He seems lighter. At first, those questions were casual. Then they became frequent. And eventually, they became personal. She noticed the way I laughed again. The way I stood closer to someone else. The way I wasn't waiting anymore. And something inside her shifted. Not because she suddenly loved me, but because she realized she had misjudged the value of what she had walked away from. There's a particular kind of pain that comes from watching someone you let go become happy without you. Not jealousy, not heartbreak, just awareness. Awareness that you were wrong. And being wrong about love hurts more than being rejected by it. One evening, She showed up where she knew we would be. Not accidentally. Intentionally. She sat across from us, smiling too carefully, laughing a little too loudly, trying to blend into a place she no longer belonged. I felt it immediately. That emotional tension that doesn't belong to the present but insists on following it. She watched the way we interacted, how we didn't interrupt each other, how we didn't seek attention, how we seemed comfortable not performing. And I could see it in her eyes. Confusion. Because she thought love had to feel loud to be real. And now she was watching something real that didn't look the way she expected. Later that night, she asked if we could talk. Alone. Not dramatically. Not urgently. Just quietly. We stepped outside. The air was cooler than inside, and the noise faded into distance. She took a moment before speaking. I didn't think this would affect me, she said. I didn't think seeing you happy would feel like this. I asked what she meant. She looked down. It feels like I made the wrong choice. That sentence was honest. But honesty doesn't always change outcomes. Sometimes it just names them. She didn't say she wanted me back. She didn't say she loved me. She just said she regretted walking away from something she hadn't understood. And I felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction. Not anger. Not triumph. Just compassion. Because I knew that feeling. I had lived inside it after she left. And I wouldn't wish it on anyone. I told her, gently, that choices don't reveal their meaning immediately. Sometimes you only understand what something was after you've lost it. She nodded. She said, I thought I wanted excitement. I thought I wanted intensity. I thought I wanted something that made me feel alive. She paused. I didn't know alive could feel calm. That was the truth she had missed. And now she was meeting it too late. She asked me if I was happy. I said yes. Not proudly. Not defensively. Just truthfully. And that was the answer that hurt her most. Because it meant I didn't need her anymore. We stood in silence for a moment. Then she said something I didn't expect. I don't want to take anything from you, she said. I just needed to say that I see it now. I see what you were offering. And I'm sorry I couldn't value it then. That apology wasn't about me. It was about her relationship with her own past. It was her forgiving herself for being younger, more confused, more drawn to chaos than clarity. And that's something no one else can do for you. So I accepted it. Not because it fixed anything, but because it released something. After that, things shifted. She stopped hovering. She stopped asking. She stopped watching. Not because the feelings disappeared, but because she understood their place. In the past, she began rebuilding herself elsewhere, chasing different things, asking different questions. And I was grateful for that, because regret should lead to growth, not interference. With her out of emotional proximity, my world returned to its natural rhythm. Quiet, warm, steady. I realized then how much emotional noise I had lived with before, how much chaos I had mistaken for passion, how much anxiety I had mistaken for care. Now, love felt like something that didn't interrupt my life. It flowed through it. It didn't demand energy. It gave it. And I finally understood why I had always felt tired in my previous version of love. Because I was trying to be someone I wasn't to be chosen by someone who didn't speak my emotional language. And now, I didn't have to translate myself. I was understood in my native form. And that's a rare thing. The past had been acknowledged. The present was peaceful. And the future felt open. Not in a dramatic way, in a steady one, which, I realized, is the only kind of future worth wanting. By the time everything had settled, I understood the value of timing. Love is not always about who comes first. Sometimes it's about who arrives when you are ready. Sometimes it's about who recognizes your worth, not when it's convenient, but when it truly matters. I learned that lesson the hard way, through absence, through silence, and through the quiet realization that the person you want doesn't always want you back. And yet, even in that pain, there is clarity. Even in loss, there is learning. Being with her sister was not a triumph. It was a discovery, a recognition that love doesn't need fireworks to feel alive. That real connection doesn't have to be loud to be true. She saw me in ways that mattered. She recognized what I offered without asking for me to prove it. And in her presence, I found a freedom I had never known. A freedom to be myself completely, without hesitation or compromise. We spent days talking about things we hadn't dared to discuss with anyone else. Small truths, vulnerabilities, hopes, and fears all came into the open. The conversations were not scripted, not rehearsed. They were real, and they were powerful. I realized that love, the kind that lasts, is built on the foundation of understanding and acceptance, not on grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but on consistent presence, on emotional reliability, on respect. She never demanded more than I could give, and that trust allowed me to open up fully. We laughed together in ways that felt new to me. It was not the nervous laughter of trying to impress someone. It was easy, unforced, and joyful. There were moments when words weren't needed, when a simple glance communicated more than any sentence could. Those quiet exchanges, those unspoken understandings, carried more weight than any dramatic moment in my past relationships ever had. In them, I felt a connection so deep that it didn't need validation from anyone else. Her sister's previous regret was a lesson I carried silently. It reminded me that the way someone treats you matters more than how loudly they claim to love you. Love is not about intensity alone. It is about patience, respect, and the willingness to stay, even when it's easier to leave. I watched her sister's realization unfold from a distance, and it solidified my understanding that being too nice is never a flaw. It is a quality that, in the right hands, becomes invaluable. And those who mistake kindness for weakness often never get to witness the depth it creates. Life with her sister was a gradual unfolding of shared experiences. We didn't rush into milestones. We didn't feel pressured by society's expectations. Every choice was deliberate, every moment cherished. From ordinary dinners to spontaneous walks in the evening, every shared experience became a thread weaving our lives together. The connection was organic, growing naturally without the forced drama I had once thought defined passion. And in that growth, I found contentment I had never known before. There were times when I reflected on the past, when I thought about her and what we had shared. Those memories were no longer painful, but instructive. They taught me to recognize what I deserved. They taught me to see love as something reciprocal, not as a transaction. They taught me that emotional investment must be met with understanding, or else it becomes one-sided and exhausting. And perhaps most importantly, they taught me that missing out on something doesn't make it a failure. It makes it a lesson, a necessary step toward what truly matters. As days turned into months, our bond strengthened. We began to speak openly about our dreams for the future. We talked about the kind of people we wanted to become individually and the kind of life we wanted to build together. Every discussion reinforced the compatibility we had discovered not through instant passion, but through careful observation and mutual respect. I realized that the love I had found with her sister was not only sustainable but transformative. It changed the way I saw myself and the way I saw love itself. There were moments when we faced challenges, as every relationship does. Misunderstandings arose, insecurities appeared, and small disagreements tested our patience. But unlike past relationships, these obstacles were never magnified by ego or miscommunication. We approached them calmly, discussing openly what we felt and why. We listened to each other with the intent to understand, not to respond. And every time we emerged from these moments, our connection deepened. The lessons of the past had prepared us to handle conflict with maturity rather than emotion-driven chaos. Through it all, I noticed the difference in how I was perceived by the world. People began to see a new version of me, confident, calm, and happy. My energy had shifted. It wasn't a transformation born from pretense, but from alignment. I had found someone who appreciated the real me, someone who valued depth over drama, kindness over intensity. And in that recognition, I discovered a joy I hadn't realized was possible. The joy of being loved for exactly who you are. Her sister's initial regret remained a distant echo, a reminder of how differently people perceive value. I didn't dwell on it, didn't feel triumphant or vindictive. Instead, I felt grateful that I had not compromised who I was for someone who couldn't see it. I had remained true to myself, and in doing so, I found someone whose love mirrored my own. That realization was profound. It reinforced the truth that the right person will appreciate your heart without conditions or demands. Over time, we created rituals that were uniquely ours. Simple things, like morning coffee together, quiet drives with no destination, shared playlists, and inside jokes, became anchors in our shared life. These moments, seemingly insignificant to an outsider, carried immense meaning for us. They were reminders that love doesn't need spectacle to be powerful. It thrives in consistency, in shared understanding, in mutual presence. And in these moments, I experienced a contentment that surpassed the highs of past, more dramatic relationships. There were days when I thought about the notion of too nice and how it had haunted me for so long. I realize now that being too nice had nothing to do with weakness and everything to do with depth. It had been a quality that allowed me to connect genuinely, to listen fully, to care authentically. And in the hands of someone who understood it, it became the foundation for an unshakable bond. I learned to value it, to embrace it, and to recognize that love that endures is built on that very authenticity. We shared our fears, our hopes, our vulnerabilities. We discussed the moments in life that had shaped us, the losses that had taught us resilience, the joys that had shown us what mattered. And through these exchanges, I found not just love, but companionship, not just affection, but partnership. She became someone whose presence was calming, whose words were grounding, whose touch was reassuring. And I became the same for her. We were two halves that had found their balance, not through intensity, but through understanding. As our relationship grew, the lessons of the past became clearer. I understood that love is not about chasing someone who doesn't recognize your worth. It is not about bending yourself to fit another's idea of what is exciting or desirable. It is about finding someone who sees you, all of you, and chooses to stay. And that choice, made freely and repeatedly, is what creates the enduring, life-changing love that I had always dreamed of. It is steady, yet powerful, quiet, yet transformative, simple, yet profound. Looking back, I see the journey clearly. The rejection, the misunderstanding, the longing, the patience, all of it led me to a love that is not defined by drama or fleeting excitement, but by depth, respect, and true connection. It is a love that honors the past without dwelling in it. It is a love that embraces the present fully. It is a love that looks toward the future with hope and stability. And most importantly, it is a love that reminds me that being true to yourself is never a mistake. In the end, love taught me many lessons. It taught me patience. It taught me self-worth. It taught me that the right person will recognize your value without you having to prove it. It taught me that being too nice is not a flaw, but a strength. And it taught me that true love is quiet, persistent, and unwavering. It doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't demand validation. It simply exists, and in its existence, it transforms lives. As I stand here today, I see the fullness of that lesson. I see the beauty in the calm, the strength in kindness, the power in patience. I see a love that is unshakable, not because it is dramatic, but because it is real. And I understand now that everything that happened before, the rejection, the loss, the regret, was preparing me for this. It was shaping me, guiding me, and ultimately leading me to the love I had been seeking all along. A love that chooses you, even when others do not. And so, I embrace it fully. Every moment, every laugh, every quiet glance, every shared silence. Because I know that this is not temporary. This is not conditional. This is love in its truest form. And in that truth, I find peace, joy, and an understanding that the heart is resilient, patient, and always capable of finding the connection it deserves. The journey was long, the lessons were hard, but the destination, this steady, unwavering love, is worth every step, every doubt, and every heartbreak that led me here.